Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying Volume 7 of the Words of the Buddha book series. We're going to be exploring chapters 11 through 20. In this particular program, I invite students from Zoom to be able to read one of the chapters. Then I'm going to share some teachings on that. I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can raise your hand or you can put your information into the chat and I'll be able to see that to be able to answer your question. So if you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can just put that into the chat. And then if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically to either volunteer to read or to ask a question. So is there anybody in Zoom that would like to be able to volunteer to read? Looks like Pat. Just give me a moment here. I'm going to turn on the screen share. So Pat's going to end up reading this chapter, and then I will share some teachings on that, and then we'll just open up to whatever questions anybody has. So go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. Concentration by mindfulness breathing leads to the destruction of the taints. Monks, concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, leads to the destruction of the taints, fetters. And how, monks, is concentration by mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it leads to the destruction of taints? Here, monks, a monk having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down, having folded his legs crosswise, straightened his body, and set up mindfulness in front of him. Just mindful, he breathes in. Mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. He trains thus, experiencing the whole body. Repeat as at chapter 1. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe in. He trains thus, reflecting on letting go, I will breathe out. It is in this way, monks, that concentration by mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated so that it leads to the destruction of the taints. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So you guys probably are well aware that the taints or the pollutions, the defilements, these are also the fetters. That's how they're referred to in some cases, as the taints or defilements or pollutions. These are the 10 individual pollutions that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. So the ultimate goal of the path to enlightenment is to uproot those and get those out of the mind. I'm getting ready to start a retreat tomorrow where I'm going to be teaching an hour to an hour and a half. I'm going to be explaining each one of these fetters for each individual class. So the retreat is the entire week, but each individual class, I'm going to be focusing on these fetters because you really need to know what is the fetter. So you need to know a description of it. You need to understand the symptoms of it so that when it's arising in your mind and you're experiencing it, you know that. Then you need to know how to eliminate it. And then you need to know how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So each one of these fetters are going to be discussed this upcoming week. And I've taught this retreat multiple times, but I'm going to be teaching it this upcoming week. And what the Buddha is describing here is that the breathing mindfulness meditation is what leads to the destruction of the fetters. There's more than just the meditation that you need, but it's an important part of your overall practice. It's part of the package. So any person who's interested in getting to enlightenment is going to need to know and practice breathing mindfulness meditation. This is what's going to lead to the elimination of the fetters, which is keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. So all of this is what we were studying last week, where the Buddha is describing his way of teaching meditation and guiding a student in meditation. You can see that you're going to see a lot of these repeats because we have it back in chapter 1 and we studied it last week. We're going to actually study it a little bit more today because you're going to see this one teaching where the Buddha breaks it down into sections, which is really nice. But this chapter is all about just helping you understand that if you're going to get to enlightenment, which needs the destruction of the taints, you're going to need to practice breathing mindfulness meditation. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to the next chapter, which is chapter 12. This particular chapter is actually very similar to the one that we just read. So we don't actually need to read this. The opening is a little bit different, where the Buddha is just saying that, hey, this breathing mindfulness meditation is of great fruit and benefit. That's what he's basically saying here, is that it's breathing mindfulness meditation that's going to produce these benefits. So this is the only thing that's really different, is instead of saying it's going to destroy the taints, it's talking about just how generally it's going to produce this great fruit and benefit. So this discourse is more broad, where the previous discourse is more detailed, saying, hey, it's going to eliminate the taints. So here, we don't really need to read this one. So I'm going to move on to the next one. This one is something that is just very general and very broad. Here, this one is what we just saw in chapter 12. This right here is all chapter 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I see Samantha's volunteering to read. We can actually pick this up here and actually read the part that we haven't read yet.
Mind liberated from the taints. I too, monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still unawakened but intent on awakening, not yet fully enlightened, generally dwelt in this dwelling. While I gradually dwelt in this dwelling, neither my body nor my eyes became fatigued, and my mind, my not clinging, was liberated from the taints. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued, and may my mind, my not clinging, be liberated from the taints. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Abandoning the memories and intention connected with the household life. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may the memories and intentions connected with the household life be abandoned by me. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to.
Can I teach right here, Samantha, and then we'll have you pick it up after that? Okay, great. All right, so here, this first part, this first two paragraphs, the Buddha is talking about how prior to his enlightenment, which you don't really hear too much about in the teachings of the Buddha, but he's saying, hey, prior to his enlightenment, he was unawakened, but he was intent on awakening. He wasn't yet fully enlightened. And his mind, during that period of time, as he was making his way to enlightenment, he generally dwelt in this dwelling. He's referring to breathing mindfulness meditation, that he generally spent a certain period of time in order to be able to train his mind to be able to get to enlightenment. And when he was doing that, he noticed that as he was getting closer and closer to enlightenment, that his body was not fatigued and his eyes were not fatigued, right? And this is because his mind was becoming closer and closer to liberation. In the unenlightened state, you'll have exhaustion, you'll have tiredness. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind doesn't experience that anymore. Your mind is just always bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted. Where in the unenlightened state, you can sometimes feel like you're dragging yourself through your day. Or at the end of your day, you can feel like you have bricks on your feet or on your shoulders. This is because the mind is out there chasing, and it's chasing cravings. And if it's not doing that, it'll swing all the way to the other side where it's dull and lethargic and lazy. So when you're practicing this middle way, your mind is actually bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted, and you don't experience fatigue. You'll get sleepy, but you won't get this tiredness and fatigue that oftentimes is experienced in the unenlightened state. So then he goes on and he says, okay, if there's someone who aspires, if there's a monk, if there's a student who aspires, that may neither my body nor my eyes become fatigued, and may my mind, by not clinging, be liberated by the taints, then they're going to need to practice this same meditation. They're going to need to pay close attention to developing that practice of breathing mindfulness meditation. So that's what he's referring to here. Then this second paragraph, he's talking about essentially how he's guiding his students to forget about their household life and basically leave those things in the past. Because remember, the vast majority of people who are studying with the Buddha were coming out of the household life, and they were essentially ordaining. They were becoming homeless, roaming ascetics who were learning closely with him. Because in the household life 2,500 years ago, it was a lot harder to get to enlightenment because you didn't have the time available to you. Just to bring water to the house was, 4-hour affair, twice a week or 3 times a week. You had to carry water back and forth. Where today we just turn the knob and boom, we've got water in our house. So the household practitioner spent a lot of time getting food, making clothes, carrying water. They didn't really have time to sit and talk about the teachings and train their mind with meditation and all these other things. So as these people are coming into this homeless life and training their mind to get to enlightenment, the Buddha would teach them to leave that life behind and leave those memories behind. Because what the mind can oftentimes do is it can dwell in the past with something that's either favorable, whether it's maybe pleasurable, something that's happened, and because of the cravings, it produced pleasant feelings, or there could have been some painful things in the past that produce painful feelings because of craving, desire, attachment. So oftentimes what the mind will do is it'll dwell in those situations, right? It'll form feelings based on those things. Like if you had really pleasurable things happen in your household life, and now you're in this life as a homeless roaming ascetic, your mind might be indulging in those thoughts. And now, kind of thinking that, oh, if I just had this, or if I just had that, if I just had my favorite blanket, if I had this or that. Or it could be something painful that happened in your past. And now your mind's forming feelings today based on that. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you will always have memories of the things that transpired in your life. But what you would like to do is eliminate any kind of clinging to those situations and then forming feelings about those today. So where you notice that your mind's doing that, you would like to cut that off, because you might be in the household life and you might choose to stay in the household life, and that's fine. But anytime your mind is going to the past, where it's either experiencing pleasure or pain because of things in the past, that's what you need to cut off. Don't allow your mind to dwell there. Doesn't mean you can't ever think about the past, because you can look at the past and learn things that maybe you did that were unwise and improve that. Or maybe you did certain things that were wise and you would like to continue to do those things. So there's no harm in looking at the past or even looking at the future and making plans. It's just that when your mind's forming feelings about those things, that's where the problem comes in. So this guidance is here for the ordained practitioners coming out of the household life, but it also applies to household practitioners too, because you would like to be sure that anytime your mind's dwelling in the past about pleasure or pain, that you don't allow the mind to do that, and you cut that off and bring it to the present moment. And that's using the Eightfold Path of right mindfulness and right effort to do that. So do you guys have questions on those first two things that I just described as part of this? Okay, looks like Samantha. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I'd just like to know about, so as far as abandoning memories and intention, is it okay to have I shouldn't say okay. Would it be wise to keep photos and journals and things like that, which I have? I don't really look at, but I know they're there. Mm-hmm. There's really no reason to have them as far as being a lesson, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's just something that, I don't know. I feel like at some point someone might want some photos of the family, or, I might want to go back and look at a journal, but at this point, there is no reason for me to have them.
Yeah. So whatever you're involved in something and you're considering these kinds of things, all you need to do is think about, is there any harm here, right? Is there harm, meaning that there's physical harm to a living being's body? Is there harm to material possessions, or is there harm to anybody's reputation? And of course, there's none of that with this situation. And you can see, okay, there's no harm in having this particular photo album. But then what I think you're really getting to, and what I would give you guidance on, is if you choose to look at these photos, which there's no harm in you choosing to do that, you would like to pay attention to the mind, because again, the same thing we were just talking about is the mind could actually dwell in that past where now it's experiencing conditioned pleasant feelings or painful feelings based on the things that happened in the past. So there's no harm in having something like that. You just need to be attentive to the mind to make sure that it's not experiencing conditioned feelings based on these things, where maybe you look at pictures, you're like, oh, there's my first steps, or, oh, there's when I got my first bicycle. Oh, that was so awesome. That was wonderful. But now the mind isn't experiencing any discontentedness. You're just looking at it and it's like, oh, that was really fun. And now you're off to the next thing, right? It's like no big deal. So if you looked at those things and you're like, oh, this is that time I fell off my bike and I had to have surgery. Oh, that was so painful. I never want to experience that ever again. that was so horrible. Oh, like now you're all like moaning and groaning over it, right? Or now you see a picture and you're so excited, like, oh my gosh, this was my first car. Oh, that was such a great car. If I just had one of those again, that would be so great. This is the mind craving, right? And forming conditioned feelings. So you'd like to just look at the pictures, enjoy it without conditioned feelings. And there's no harm in actually doing this. So that's where you can step away from having to ask, is this okay or that okay? You can just look at, is there any harm here? And that's what you're doing, is eliminating harmlessness or eliminating harm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we can move on to this next piece, Samantha.
Okay. Avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive. Residing equanimous, mindful, and clearly comprehending. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the repulsive in the repulsive. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, may I reside perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and the unrepulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. If a monk aspires, avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive, may I reside equanimous, mindful, and clearly comprehending. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to.
Okay, let me talk about this one for a second, Samantha. So this words of repulsive and unrepulsive, sometimes people have a little bit of challenge with these. One of the ways you might think about it is agreeable and disagreeable, right? So what the Buddha is teaching you as part of this journey to enlightenment is helping you to understand that what the mind is doing is it's longing, yearning, and chasing after the agreeable. And it's wanting to hold on to that agreeable contact through the sense spaces, because that's where it gets the conditioned pleasant feelings. And then it's repulsed to this disagreeable, right? It's pushing this away and thinking, oh, this is horrible, right? And it's experiencing that painful feelings. So the mind in the unenlightened state is trying to grab on to the agreeable, or here it's being called the unrepulsive, and is trying to push away the disagreeable or the repulsive. That's what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the point where there's just the opposite thing going on in the mind, right? So here the Buddha is saying, may I reside perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation should be attended to, closely attended to. So what he's saying is, see that agreeable contact as repulsive. Because here he's saying, may I perceive the disagreeable in the agreeable, right? So that way you can see that when there's this agreeable contact, there's these conditioned pleasant feelings. And that is something that I don't aspire to experience. I don't aspire to experience those conditioned pleasant feelings. Because in the unenlightened state, that's exactly what the mind is doing. It's chasing after its cravings because it wants, it's expecting, it's longing, yearning to get what it wants so it can get those pleasant feelings. And what you're trying to do is get to the point where you see that as repulsive, that you're disinterested in that any kind of discontentedness, that's a conditioned feeling, that it's considered to be in your mind that you're disinterested in this, right? And it's breathing mindfulness meditation that will help you to do that, because it's training the mind to let go. And now the next one, he's saying, perceive the unrepulsive in the repulsive. So here he's saying, see this disagreeable contact as being agreeable to you, right? Because this disagreeable contact, the mind wants to push it away. That's the aversion that the mind has. But you would like to see it as agreeable. So I'll use one of the, examples that I typically use is that if you're at a stoplight and you're hearing music and you hear that sound that is music that you particularly like and you listen to it, you see that as agreeable. You get so happy and excited. Yay! Oh my gosh, that's the favorite music. Oh my gosh, you're just dancing. Your mind's getting all hyped up, right? You need to be able to see that as something you're not aspiring to. But that doesn't mean you don't enjoy the music, right? You can enjoy the music, you can dance, you can have a good time, you can do all this kind of stuff, but you need to train your mind not to have conditioned pleasant feelings. That sounds very odd for somebody who's not familiar with this, but you can actually get to the point where you can dance, you can enjoy, you can laugh, you can have a good time, but there's no conditioned feelings in the mind. And then likewise, when you hear that music that you typically don't listen to, you can be like, I don't listen to that music, but it's wonderful that he's listening to that or she's listening to that. They're having a good time. Where in the unenlightened state, you'd be repulsed by that. It'd be disagreeable. You're like, oh, who's playing that horrible music? Blah, 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 right? But by the time you're training your mind in this direction, you would like to be able to see this as agreeable to you. That this music that you don't typically listen to, it's like, I don't usually listen to that music, but you know what? I can see why that person maybe enjoys listening to it, right? So you see it as agreeable. That's what you would like to get to. And you like to do that with all your sense bases, not just the ear, but all of them. And the Buddha's going on and essentially giving you a similar kind of aspect of this discourse in the same way, all coming back to the same understanding that I'm sharing with you, is that you need to get to the point where you despise discontentedness, that this conditioned pleasant feelings, you're not interested in those. And when you see your mind's experiencing painful feelings based on disagreeable contact, you're interested in bringing that into your life and training your mind to no longer have those painful experiences. And what is it that's going to help you to lead to that? Well, it's breathing mindfulness meditation, because that's what's training your mind to let go. Let go of chasing after the pleasant feelings. Let go of seeing this thing as being repulsive and disagreeable and pushing it away. It's going to train your mind to let go. So any questions here on this one? Okay, I don't see any questions on this one. We did have a question come in previously that I didn't see. The person said, can household practitioner get to enlightenment? Yes, absolutely, they can get to enlightenment. There's nothing about living at a monastery and putting on a robe and shaving your hair that is going to guarantee that you get to enlightenment. And there's nothing about staying in the household life and wearing regular clothes and maybe not shaving your hair that would preclude you from getting to enlightenment. What it really comes down to for a household practitioner, it comes down to your discipline. You need to have really deep discipline, because as an ordained practitioner, you're living at the monastery. And if this monastery is actively teaching, you've got the discourses of the Buddha at your fingertips. You've got other people at your fingertips that are actively learning and practicing on the path. So you're in this womb of the woman, growing and developing, being nurtured and becoming a better and better person. As a household practitioner, you're outside the womb, right? You need to be able to make sure that you're going into that womb, going into the temple, that you're learning actively with a teacher, that you're disciplined to do your meditation, that you actively seek out the resources that you need to be able to learn and understand the teachings. Whereas an ordained practitioner, you have a lot of that stuff right at your fingertips. But ordained practitioners have challenges and obstacles too that they need to overcome as well. So both of these lifestyles, you can get to enlightenment. It's just a matter of overcoming the obstacles that are blocking you from being able to get to enlightenment. And there's a unique set of obstacles in both situations. So we just talked a little bit about the obstacles for the household life, but there's also obstacles in the ordained life as well. All right, so let's go to this next one. If you could read this one, Samantha.
Okay. Residing in the first, second, third, and fourth jhana. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, distant from sense desires, distant from unwholesome mental states, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness of mind, he enters and resides in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, based in concentration, filled with excitement and joy. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the fading away of excitement, remaining imperturbable, mindful and clearly aware, he experiences in himself the joy of which the noble ones say. Peaceful is he who resides with equanimity and mindfulness. He enters the third jhana. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, having given up pleasure and pain, and with the fading away of former gladness and sadness, he enters and resides in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Residing in the formless perceptions. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, with the complete transcendence of perceptions of forms, with the passing away of the perception of sense reactions, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, enter and reside in the base of the infinity of space. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, by completely transcending the base of the infinity of space, aware that consciousness is infinite, enter and reside in the base of the infinity of consciousness. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, by completely transcending the base of infinity consciousness, aware that there is nothing, enter and reside in the base of nothingness. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, by completely transcending the base of nothingness, enter and reside in the base of neither perception nor non-perception. This same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to. Residing in the elimination of perception and feeling. Therefore, monks, if a monk aspires, may I, by completely transcending the base of neither perception nor non-perception, enter and reside in the elimination of perception and feeling. The same concentration by mindfulness of breathing should be closely attended to.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. I'm going to just pause you there so I can talk about these that you just read. What Samantha just read through are attainments. These are attainments that you experience on your way to enlightenment. The jhanas, we've talked about these before, and if you've taken any of the classes where I've taught about these are enhanced qualities of mind that you're experiencing as part of putting together the Eightfold Path. One of the big misunderstandings that you'll hear from people is sometimes people think that it's just meditating that produces these, or it's only when you're in meditation that you're experiencing these, and they think that you turn on and turn these off. This isn't actually true. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you're experiencing, and you actually need these in order to be able to get to even the first stage of enlightenment, but then beyond that to enlightenment itself. For example, in the second jhana, you no longer have a subconscious mind. Prior to the second jhana, there's a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. But by the time you get to the second jhana, there's been this unification or this oneness of mind, that the mind has become one. Because the conscious mind is polluted, but the subconscious mind is even more polluted. And in order to be able to purify it on your way to enlightenment, you need to have full awareness of the entire mind, where you have unification of the mind or oneness of mind. So these are qualities that you experience not just by meditation, and meditation alone won't get you there. You're going to need to also understand other aspects of the path, including moral conduct. Nobody would be able to get to the jhanas if they didn't improve their moral conduct. So this is some attainments that you'll be experiencing on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. Then we have these other attainments that the Buddha is talking about here. I have them in this book that I describe them, but I don't describe them in class because I never actually committed these to my memory, but I have them in the book so that you can understand what these are. So if you have questions about them, I can take questions about those. And there's also this one here, this is another attainment as well. So let me know if you guys have any questions on the attainments here, because the Buddha is talking about how it's breathing mindfulness meditation that leads to them, but you shouldn't take that as that's the only thing that you need in order to be able to get to these, because you wouldn't be able to get to the attainments without actually practicing the entire Eightfold Path. So it looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Teacher David. I had a question on the infinity of consciousness.
Okay.
I believe it's basically, as you describe it, as basically being able to see your past lives. And you also said that thing in the notes that not everybody attains this infinity of consciousness while getting to enlightenment. So I was wondering how, and I think you said this before, but I'm not exactly sure what the response was. Like, how does one, the cycle of rebirth is one of the most important things, I guess, to verify while you're getting to enlightenment. So I was wondering how people are able to verify the cycle of rebirth without having this attainment.
So,
and so get in the path to enlightenment.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways to verify the cycle of rebirth. It's not just through seeing your past lives. If you go to volume 11, chapter 105, which you've gone to before, you know that I have 17 different criteria there. You know, one of those things is to study dependent origination and be able to independently verify that. So there's multiple things there that you can use in order to verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's not just one of those things or all of those things that's going to lead to it, verifying the cycle of rebirth. It's a collection of those things that are going to help you to be able to verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's not dependent on having seen your previous lives. Not everyone will see their previous lives.
So how does anybody know for sure that they've not seen the previous life, that there is rebirth?
So that's why I pointed you to volume 11, chapter 105, Viphav, because that's where the 17 different criteria are listed. It's not just one thing. There's multiple things there. And I don't have the ability to go through all 17 of those here. But if you go to volume 11, chapter 105, which you've looked at before, but that's where it's all documented, that you can see the 17 different things that I'm sharing with you that are possible to use a combination of these to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, it looks like Alberto has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I do. What does basic on seclusion entail for the household practitioner?
So based on seclusion in the jhanas here, what that means is that you're comfortable being alone, that you could go on vacation alone and be completely fine with that. You could go camping in the woods all by yourself alone, and you'd be completely comfortable with that. You can go to the movies by yourself. You can go to dinner by yourself, because oftentimes what the mind does is it clings to people and it doesn't feel comfortable to go off and do things by yourself. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would go off and live in the forest by themselves, and it was a very scary place, right? Because 2,500 years ago, there was a lot of creatures walking around that no longer are really walking around so much anymore. So there was a lot of things in the forest that people perceived as being very scary, and they would have a lot of fear because of that. So you don't need to go off and live in the forest for 6 months in order to be able to get to enlightenment. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they were able to do that as ordained practitioners because they didn't have any other things that they were involved in other than just training their mind. But as a household practitioner, the way that you can replicate this is through doing things like I mentioned, going on vacation, going to the movies, going to the mall, going to dinner, and noticing that you're not bored, you're not lonely, you're having a good time. You could choose to talk to people or not and be just fine. You're not shy to talk to people. You can smile at people. You could also choose to, not talk to people, and you'd be just fine in that situation too. So that's what it means, that you're going to need to train your mind to eliminate this craving to always be around people.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense. I think Martha has a question as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's right here.
I'm here. Yes, Teacher David, I would like you to, if you can provide me with an example of how you start noticing the unification of your conscious and unconscious mind.
Sure.
I imagine it's a process and it doesn't happen like this.
Yes.
I'm asking because, because sometimes I'm dreaming, and in the middle of the dream,
For instance, we were talking about someone committed a crime, and we were talking about that during dinner. And Alberto said, "Oh, how can you cut somebody in pieces? That's something like I cannot imagine thinking about that." And so I had a dream about that. And then Alberto and I had to do that thing, and we need to cut this person. And so in the middle of the dream, I was like, "No, this is not a wise thing to do. You need to eliminate this from your mind." That was in my dream. And then I changed to another dream. And I was like, wow. And then I remembered that the next day. Is that a proof, or is that just something?
Okay, so first, a couple of things here is some people refer to this oneness of mind or unification of mind as opening of the third eye, or the divine eye, or the inner eye. When this is been accomplished, when the mind is experiencing oneness of mind, some of the things that you're going to notice is that you're very reflective and very introspective, that you're able to easily look inward at the mind and see all that's going on. That's why people call it the inward looking eye, or the inner eye, or the divine eye, because you're able to very easily look inward and see what's going on in your own mind, that there's nothing hidden. Another thing for you to understand in terms of being able to see that the mind is accomplished this is that it's helpful to know what the conscious and subconscious mind is and the symptoms of it. If you've ever been standing around and maybe hanging out with friends or family or something, and you blurted something out, and when you blurted that thing out, you were like, what? Where did that come from? Maybe it was like a little bit racist or sexist or something like this. And you're like, where did that come from? Because your conscious mind doesn't think that way, but your subconscious mind, being more polluted, it does think that way. And your subconscious mind can kind of throw things up into your conscious mind, and then you just kind of blurt it out without really thinking about it. But then after you say it, you hear it, and your conscious mind is like, I don't think like that. I'm not racist, or I'm not sexist, or something like that. And it's where's your subconscious mind. So if you've ever experienced that kind of situation, and you go an elongated period of time where your mind doesn't do that, and then you're experiencing this introspection and this reflection as well, this is how you'll know that your mind is experiencing this oneness of mind. And there's also going to be these other qualities that are going along with it. So before you've gotten to this, you would have already gone through the first jhana. So you would have already gone through this thinking and pondering, where the mind is being, cultivating a lot of wisdom. Where in the past, before you got into the first jhana, you would maybe just go through life kind of bippity boppity boopity, and you would kind of just plow through life, not really thinking about the decisions that you're making and how you're impacting other people. And the mind thinks everybody else is the problem, and you're just kind of going through life. Where when you get into this first jhana, in addition to the other things that it's talking about, you start to be thinking about the things that you're doing much more closely. That you don't just kind of haphazardly make decisions to start that new business, or how you're going to treat this customer or this boss that you have. You're not going to just, unconsciously just plow through that. You're going to be thinking, in the past, I used to do things like this, but now with the teachings of the Buddha, I think it would be wiser to do it this way. And now you start thinking and pondering. And this is a period of time, upwards of a year, if not longer, that the mind is doing this, because that's where you're really cultivating a lot of wisdom about the path, where you're thinking about the situations that you're in and how to apply the teachings of the Buddha to that situation. So that's what the thinking and pondering is. And you would have gone through that period for an extended period of time where you're cultivating lots of wisdom during that period of time. And now, as you've cultivated a lot of that wisdom, eventually you're going to get to the second jhana, where your mind becomes very reflective and introspective. There's still this thinking and pondering that's going on, but it's not nearly as much as it was when you were in the first jhana. In the first jhana, your mind can almost be obsessive as it's thinking about the teachings of the Buddha in any given situation that you're in. So you would have first seen that. You would have first seen the thinking and pondering. Then you would have seen the reflection starting to come in, and this deep inner reflection and inward looking eye.
And regarding to the dream,
The dreams
Okay.
don't indicate anything whatsoever.
No?
Yeah.
That in the dream you say, don't do that. That's not wise. That's not. I should eliminate harming anybody. I was I was saying that to myself in my mind during the dream. Doesn't indicate anything.
Yeah, dreams don't indicate whether you're in any of the attainments or not. Instead, the way you can use your dreams is that you can look at the what you're experiencing. So if you were in the dream and you were like, "Oh, that's really unwise to do that," you can see even in your dream you're applying the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha. Or if you wake up from your dream and you're jealous or you're fearful, you can look at the dream and be like, "What was I jealous and fearful about?" Oh, I don't want Alberto to die, and I'm jealous when he's around other people, and oh, I'm attached to Alberto. I see the issue. So now you use that insight to now in your day-to-day life, you can practice reflection on death, that contemplation of death, so that you can train your mind to let go of that attachment to Alberto. So the dreams can kind of give you like a little window into the mind about what cravings, desires, attachments are still in the mind, but it doesn't tell you about any kind of aspect of attainments and what you might have attained, other than the fact by the time you get to enlightenment, as you're dreaming, they're going to be all wonderful dreams, all peaceful dreams, nothing disturbing whatsoever. And it'll be like that for multiple years. You won't have any quote unquote bad dreams.
Okay, so the only thing I can conclude from that is that I'm assimilating the teachings in this.
Yeah, exactly. You can see like, wow, I'm even applying the teachings in my dreams, right? Like that's a nice indicator that you would like to see. And that shows you how this wisdom that you're taking on board in the mind, it's permanent, right? That you will cultivate this wisdom and it's a permanent mental state, whether you're conscious, whether you're unconscious, sleeping, whether you get hit on the head, falling off your motorbike and you go unconscious and you start waking up, you're still going to be practicing the teachings. The wisdom is still there.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah. And what I would like to add to that about the wisdom still being there, that's because it's unconditioned, right? If you have something that's conditioned, well, if you take away the conditions, then that thing is no longer there anymore, right? But when you get to unconditioned mental qualities like the cultivation of wisdom, loving kindness, mindfulness is unconditioned by the time you cultivate it, compassion, all these things. When you have these unconditioned mental states in your mind that you've cultivated, there's no condition that's producing it. So there's no condition that can take it away either, even dreaming. That's why by the time you get to enlightenment, you even have wonderful dreams all the time. You won't even have a bad dream because your mind is physically incapable of having a bad emotional experience, even in a dream.
Even in a dream. Oh, interesting. Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's move on here. Let's see, the formless perceptions. We talked about this. And now we've got one last one for Samantha, if you'd still like to read, Samantha.
Sure. All that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. When monks, the concentration by mindfulness of breathing has been developed and cultivated in this way, if he feels a pleasant feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a painful feeling, he understands it is impermanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he understands it is not permanent. He understands it is not held to. He understands it is not delighted in. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it without holding on to it. When he feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands. I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands. I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands. With the breakup of the body following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. Just as monks, an oil lamp burns in dependence on the oil in the wick, and with the exhaustion of the oil in the wick, it is extinguished through lack of fuel. So too monks. When a monk feels a feeling terminating with the body, he understands. I feel a feeling terminating with the body. When he feels a feeling terminating with life, he understands. I feel a feeling terminating with life. He understands. With the breakup of the body, following the exhaustion of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here.
Right. Thank you, Samantha. So here, this is what we were just talking about previously about the agreeable and disagreeable and not clinging to these feelings and not pushing away. And the Buddha's talking about here in more detail than he was previously, but he's talking about how breathing mindfulness meditation is what leads to that, right? That if you experience a feeling that is pleasurable and there's pleasant feelings there, that you understand, okay, there's that feeling, right? That's not what you're interested in. He's talking about the unenlightened state that you're experiencing this conditioned feeling. But when you get to enlightenment, you won't experience those conditioned feelings. Your mind will be having these unconditioned mental states, right? So, but if you do notice that there is a conditioned pleasant feeling in the mind, you understand it's impermanent. Don't hold on to it. Don't delight in it. Essentially, that's what the Buddha teaches you, to cut it off and let it go. And then the same thing is with the painful feelings, that between now and enlightenment, you're going to be experiencing some painful feelings. And as you do, understand they are impermanent. Don't hold on to them and don't delight in them, but cut them off and let them go. And then the same thing with the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And slowly but surely, this is what transforms the mind. So this is wisdom that you need to be able to understand and know that it's breathing mindfulness meditation that's helping you to be able to train your mind to do that, is let go and understand that all of this stuff is impermanent, and don't allow the mind to hold on to it. So the Buddha goes on further down here and just gives an analogy about that. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Would you guys like to ask questions? You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we'll move to the next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this next chapter? This is chapter 14. Okay, Vibhav, go ahead.
The enlightenment factors accompanied by breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, mindfulness of breathing mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and benefit. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and benefit? Here, monks, a monk develops the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of investigation, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of energy, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of joy, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of tranquility, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of concentration, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. He develops the enlightenment factor of equanimity, accompanied by mindfulness of breathing, based upon seclusion, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination, maturing and release. It is in this way, monks, that mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and benefit. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So I'm not sure if you guys remember the chapter that we read last week where the Buddha was talking about how breathing mindfulness meditation leads to the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which then leads to the 7 factors of enlightenment, which then leads to true wisdom and liberation, right? That's the kind of sequence that he shares, because developing the breathing mindfulness meditation will cultivate the awareness of those 4 foundations of mindfulness: the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And then that helps you to then be able to apply the 7 factors of enlightenment, where these are a tool to fine tune the mind and bring the mind to the middle, right? And then that's ultimately what's going to lead to enlightenment itself. So here the Buddha is just skipping right from breathing mindfulness meditation and saying, hey, it's going to help you to develop the 7 factors of enlightenment. But what's in the middle of that is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Another thing to note here is that there's this freedom from strong feelings, elimination, maturing in release. This is something that you need to keep in mind, because oftentimes when we talk about these teachings, we say, oh, cut it off and let it go, right? And then we just leave it at that, right? But really, that's very rare. Until your mind's more developed and you're in like maybe the 2nd or 3rd stage of enlightenment, your mind's not literally cutting it off and letting it go all at one time. Many of these attachments, it's going to be cut it off and 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 cut it off. Some of them 5 years maybe, right? You're cutting off this discontentedness that keeps coming up from this one stubborn craving, or these 2 or 3 or 4 stubborn cravings. So the mind needs to mature and mature and mature and mature and mature before it will actually release. So that's why you would like to be dedicated to breathing mindfulness meditation each day. You would like to be practicing generosity each day. You would like to be working on your moral conduct each day. Also, loving kindness meditation, practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life. All of these things, it's maturing and maturing and maturing and maturing the mind before some of these really stubborn cravings will actually let go, right? Because we talk about craving, desire, attachment as if it's all the same thing, but in reality, there's a real spectrum here. You have little light, kind of smaller cravings, like maybe you go to 7-Eleven and you're looking for a chocolate bar, they don't have it, and you're like, oh man, they don't have my chocolate bar. You're a little bit frustrated and agitated because it's out, right? But then there's like these deeper held cravings, like if your mom died or something like that, right? Or somebody who's close to you. If you have somebody who's really close to you and you're attached to them, it's going to be much more significant discontentedness in the mind because the attachment is more deeply held. So there's this real spectrum here. And those deeply held cravings, desires, attachments, the mind needs to mature much more before we'll actually release those. This little chocolate bar that you didn't get, yeah, you can let that go within a couple of seconds. And then maybe the next time you come in and they don't have it, no big deal, you're fine. You don't even experience a little bit of ickiness, right? So you can let that one go pretty quickly and pretty easily. But these others, the mind's going to need to mature. And these 7 factors of enlightenment are going to help you to be able to do that. But it all comes back to the topic of this book, which is the breathing mindfulness meditation. And that's what you would like to really dedicate time to developing that practice if you haven't already. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So we'll move to the next chapter. This is chapter 15. And it looks like Pat would like to read that one. Go ahead, sir.
Do you want me to read this in stages like the one that Samantha did?
Yeah, in fact, this first part here, I don't know that we need to read this one because this is just saying, hey, this breathing mindfulness meditation is of great fruit and benefit. And now the Buddha is going to go into the details of what that fruit and benefit is.
Okay. One of 2 fruits to be predicted. Monks, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, one of 2 fruits is to be predicted. Either final knowledge, wisdom, in this way, in this very life, or if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner. And how, monks, is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that one of 2 fruits is to be predicted? Either final knowledge in this very life, if there is a residue of clinging, the state of non-returner.
Okay, so we don't
Here, monks.
We don't need to read all that because
okay.
that's the whole chunk of him guiding people.
It is in this way that mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated so that one of 2 fruits is to be predicted, either final knowledge in this very life, or if there is a residue of clinging, state of non-returner.
Okay, so this first part that Pat just read, this is helping you to understand that breathing mindfulness meditation leads to enlightenment or to this third stage of enlightenment. So when he talks about final knowledge, that is enlightenment, that the mind has achieved final knowledge. It fully knows everything about the path to enlightenment. And then there's this state of non-returning, which is the third stage of enlightenment. So he's saying this breathing mindfulness meditation is what leads to that. So we've had a chapter like this previously that was similar. So now we'll go on to this one, which actually, let me pause you here for a second, Pat. A lot of these are very similar. This one is just saying that this is of great good, that this meditation is of great good. And now this one is basically the same thing. We don't even need to read this. This is of great security from bondage, right? That this meditation is going to eliminate that bondage where the mind's all bound up in experiencing anger and sadness and frustration. This meditation leads to security from that, where your mind's peaceful and joyful. It's liberated. And this one, I'm just going to go through these, Pat. This one is that breathing mindfulness meditation leads to a great sense of motivation, where the mind can be motivated, because in the unenlightened state, you'll be dull and lethargic, right? Or you're chasing. So this meditation is going to help you get to the middle, because what's keeping the mind in that dull and lethargic state is its cravings, desires, attachments. It's holding on. That's why it's lacking motivation. Or if the mind is chasing after things, again, that's the craving and clinging. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to let go of all of that. Then this one is that breathing mindfulness meditation is going to lead to this great comfort, because by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is very comfortable. In fact, as you're making your way to enlightenment, your mind becomes more and more comfortable all the time, right? So you might notice that. So here he's going through all of this. Yeah, I don't think we need to read any of this, because I can just summarize it rather than reading through all the text. So let me know if you guys have questions on this. This is just the Buddha in multiple different ways, multiple different angles, explaining how breathing mindfulness meditation is going to produce significant results for you. I don't see anything. Okay, let's see what we got here in our next one. Pat, here we go. That should be a breeze for you.
A monk who is not lacking of jhana. Monks, it is for just the time of a finger snap, a monk develops mindfulness of breathing. He is called a monk who is not lacking of jhana, who acts upon the teachings of the teacher, who responds to his advice, and who does not eat the country's alms food, having produced no results or benefits. How much more, then, those who cultivate it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here, what the Buddha is saying is this breathing mindfulness meditation, if you do it even for the time of a finger snap, that you would not lack of the qualities of the jhanas. That those jhanas that are experienced on the way to the first stage of enlightenment, it needs breathing mindfulness meditation to experience it. We saw that in the previous discourse, but here the Buddha is talking about you wouldn't be lacking in that. So you're going to need to practice that in order to, the breathing mindfulness meditation, in order to be able to get to the jhanas. But then also the Buddha is talking about one who acts upon the guidance of a teacher and who responds to their advice, because you can actually have students who are actually learning and practicing, spending time with a teacher, but yet they're very resistant to any type of guidance. Maybe they'll have bouts of that at different times. So an individual is going to need to get comfortable with receiving guidance from somebody. That's something that the unenlightened mind doesn't really like, especially if there's ego in there. It can have a real difficult time with that. One of the things that the Buddha talks about here, when he talks about someone who's working towards growth and development on the path to enlightenment, he sometimes says this where he says, who does not eat the country's alms food, having produced no results or benefits. So what he's talking about here is that if you've come out of this life of household life and you're living on the donations of food, clothing, shelter, and medical care from the community of household practitioners, well, the thing is here that you're afforded that opportunity so that you can train your mind. And now by you training your mind, you have some wisdom that you've cultivated within your own practice to then be able to share that wisdom with others, to be able to help them, to be able to then get to enlightenment. But if you're just sitting around being complacent and you're not training your mind, then you're kind of wasting your time and you're wasting all these donations that are being shared in order to keep you alive. Instead, you'd be better off to just go back to the household life and, assume a job, and then at least you're working and you're, making money and you're supporting yourself instead of just sitting around, kind of lurching off of these donations that are coming in. So what the Buddha is saying is, okay, if you've done this work with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're actively developing the mind. You're not going to lack in these jhanas, these enhanced qualities. And if you act upon the teachings of the teacher and respond to their advice, then that means you're actually bringing some type of benefit to the public. And this donations that you're living off of, they have produced results, that they're not just going to waste, so to speak. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. It's a really short little paragraph helping you to be able to see, again, the importance of breathing mindfulness meditation, but also by cultivating breathing mindfulness meditation, there's going to be this benefit that is coming to the individual, but then also to the country or the community of people that are making offerings to those people if they're choosing to live an ordained life and receive donations. Okay, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. The question here on YouTube is, sir, how to get rid of laziness? The way you've got to be able to do that is practice the enlightenment factor of investigation, which is investigating the teachings of the Buddha, which is what you're doing right now, and then reading books, applying effort to investigate and have keen interest in studying the teachings. That's the first part. That's going to lead to you finding the information that you need in order to be able to arise this enlightenment factor of energy, where there's this vigor and vitality, this initiative and willingness to do something. And then that springs up the joy in the mind. So it all starts with investigation, examination of the teachings. This is part of the 7 factors of enlightenment. That's what's going to lead to getting out of that laziness. So where you see your mind's lazy or complacent, it usually doesn't want to do things like attend a class or read a book or do a meditation or those kinds of things. So you need to be able to start there. And that's what is going to help to uplift the mind and get it out of that laziness. Because what's causing the laziness is the craving, desire, attachments. And you need to be able to train your mind to let that go. Don't just sit around and watch TV. Don't just sit around searching social media, watching YouTube and all of that. Put the mind into a situation where it's investigating the teachings. That's going to take you away from those other things and help you to break down those cravings. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to chapter 17 here. And is there someone who would like to read this one? All right, Andrew, go ahead, sir.
Chapter 17, Breathing Mindfulness Meditation, an Excellent and Peaceful Dwelling. The Buddha commented on the incidences of monks dying through suicide by themselves or by encouraging and assisting others to do so. On this occasion, the perfectly enlightened one had given them the discourses of Anapanasati, breathing mindfulness meditation. Monks, this concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes right on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise. Just as, monks, in the last month of the hot season, when a mass of dust and dirt has swirled up, a great rain cloud out of season disperses it and extinguishes it on the spot. So too, concentration by mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise. And how is this so?
We already,
Here, monks.
Sorry, Andrew. We read all of this last week, so I'm going to have you skip over that if it's okay with you, and then just go right down here.
It is in this way, monks, that concentration by mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, so that it is peaceful and superb, an excellent and peaceful dwelling, and it dissolves and extinguishes on the spot evil, unwholesome states whenever they arise.
Okay, thank you, sir. So this part that we skipped over, for those of you guys that maybe weren't here last week, you'll find it in chapter 1 of this book, where it's the Buddha guiding you. And we're about to see it here in a moment as well. Here, the thing that you can take away from this discourse is to help you understand that what the Buddha is teaching you is that breathing mindfulness meditation can dispel evil on the spot. Meaning that if you see any type of unwholesome quality coming up in the mind, if you practice breathing mindfulness meditation, boom, it can take care of that, right? And that's not to say that if you've never meditated before, that you're just going to sit down and it's just going to magically take care of it. But if you're developing a consistent, ongoing practice, right, you can get to a point where anger comes up in your mind. You can actually sit down in meditation or whatever other position you're going to use. And within a few moments, you can actually train your mind to let that go. Or if you're driving in a car and someone cuts you off in traffic and you get angry, at that stoplight, when you're sitting there, you can close your eyes, do a little bit of breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, and it trains your mind that you can let go of that. So it dispels that evil, unwholesome mental state right there on the spot. Whether it's a sexual craving, whether it's anger, whether it's jealousy, whatever it is, you can use breathing mindfulness meditation in this way. But it's not like that if you've never actually been practicing it, that it's just going to magically do that for you. So that's where you'd like to cultivate this practice so that when you need it, it's there. And as the Buddha teaches, that you don't regret it having not actually practiced. So here, this was actually taught when the Buddha was made aware of people who were encouraging suicide, right? Or they were actually choosing to die by suicide. The breathing mindfulness meditation is what's going to help you to be able to dispel that and get that out of the mind, right? So that now if you see that thought coming up, boom, you can get that out of the mind. And again, if you haven't been meditating consistently, it's not just going to magically do that. But if you've been consistently meditating, this is going to help you when you see that suicidal thought come up in the mind. So that's what you'd like to take away from a discourse like this. So now you can use that in your day-to-day life and test it to see if it's true, right? This is the learning part. Reflect on it and be like, yeah, if I actually did that meditation and I train my mind to let go, that would actually be really helpful. So now you practice it. You practice breathing mindfulness meditation on a consistent basis. Then when you notice that there's an unwholesome thought coming up in the mind, you sit down and do meditation, and boom, when you see your mind release that, then you'll know this is the truth. This is the true teachings of the Buddha, because you see that it actually works. That's how you cultivate wisdom, and you know these things to be true. So let me know what questions that you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now we'll move to the next chapter. This is chapter 16. Here, this chapter is actually, yes, this is what I thought it is. Okay, I tell you what, let's not read this chapter. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with this. This is actually the chapter that is from chapter 1, but it's broken down into the sections showing you exactly how the mind's developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So we read all of this, where the Buddha talks about how this meditation is of great fruit and benefit, and he then starts going into guiding the student in terms of the meditation. This is how he's guiding them in the meditation. But then when we get down here, what it does is it breaks this same teaching down to show you what sections of it are actually leading to the development of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So this first part is where it's helping you to develop the first foundation of mindfulness, where it's helping you to develop awareness of the bodily sensations, right? And you don't have to memorize this, because I've actually consolidated this in the way that I guide you guys in meditation. But just know that this is the part of his guidance that is actually leading to the development of that first foundation of mindfulness. And then this next part is the part that leads to the development of the second foundation, which is being aware of the feelings, the conditioned feelings. Then there's the contemplation of the mind, where you learn about the conditioning of the mind, and you develop that ability to be able to see the mind. And then there's the mental objects and being able to be aware of those mental objects. So we read a discourse like this similar last week, but here this one breaks it down really nice for you. We don't necessarily need to read it. It's just that the Buddha is helping you to be able to see exactly where it's broken down. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this sections of breathing mindfulness meditation. I would segment it out to help you see where you're developing each of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Okay, I don't see any questions. So now let's go to the next one. Here, this is chapter 19. Is there someone who would like to read this one? We're actually going to read the entire discourse here. Yep. Okay, we got Vibhav and Samantha. So go ahead, Vibhav.
Thank you. Protecting one's own mind, you protect others. Monks, once in the past, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole that dressed his apprentice Meda Kathalika thus. Come, dear Meda Kathalika, climb the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders. Having replied, yes, teacher, the apprentice Mother Meda Kathalika climbed the bamboo pole and stood on the teacher's shoulders. The acrobat then said to the apprentice Meda Kathalika, you protect me, dear Meda Kathalika, and I will protect you. Thus guarded by one another, protected by one another, we'll display our skills, collect a fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. When this was said, the apprentice Meda Kathalika replied, that's not the way to do it, teacher. You protect yourself, teacher, and I'll protect myself. Thus, each self-guarded and self-protected will display our skills, collect a fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. That's the method there, perfectly enlightened one said. It's just as the apprentice Meda Kathalika said to the teacher, I will protect myself, monks. Thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others, monks. Thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting one's own mind, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects one's own mind. And how is it, monks, that by protecting one's own mind, one protects others? By the pursuit, development, and cultivation of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is in such a way that by protecting one's own mind, one protects others. And how is it, monks, that by protecting others, one protects one's own mind? By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and compassion. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects one's own mind. I will protect my own mind, monks. Thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others, monks. Thus should the 4 foundations of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting one's own mind, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects one's own mind. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vibhav. So this is a great little story here that this, teacher is trying to give the student some advice and saying, hey, you protect me and I'll protect you, right? That's a dependency where there's an attachment there. It's like, hey, you've got to do something for me and I've got to do something for you. But then the student speaks up and says, no, how about this? How about I protect myself? And then by me protecting myself, it'll protect you as well, right? And that's what the Buddha is saying is that's the path. That's what you would like to be able to get to, is where you're protecting your own mind. Don't make your condition of your mind dependent on somebody else because nobody else can do anything about your mind, right? You would like to remove these dependencies where you're trying to maybe rely on somebody to be able to do something for you in order to be able to keep your mind in a certain condition. That's not what you would like to be able to do. But if you watch over your mind with the 4 foundations of mindfulness, now by watching over your mind, not allowing any anger and frustration or other discontent feelings to come into it, you're actually protecting your own mind, but you're also protecting others too. Because if you allow that anger to come into your mind, now you can lash out at somebody else, right? So you're incapable of protecting somebody else's mind. You're only capable of protecting your own mind. And the Buddha is explaining how it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness that are going to do that for you. So you'd like to be practicing these at all times. If you haven't yet learned them, understood them, and practiced them, you need to pay a lot of attention to that because that's what's going to help you to get to enlightenment. That's a real linchpin for you because you need to be able to spot the arising of discontentedness as a bodily sensation. Once the discontentedness comes into the mind, you still would like to cut it off there as a feeling, but you got to get ahead of that because as long as your mind keeps forming the feeling, it's going to keep doing that. So it can often take practitioners multiple years to get to the point where you're observing the bodily sensations and noticing those every single time. and you're cutting off and letting go every single time. But once you do, enlightenment is very close by, because you're no longer allowing your mind to form conditioned feelings. You're out of that. You're cutting it off at the bodily sensations every single time. You're very close to enlightenment at that point. So as long as you keep allowing the mind to form the conditioned feelings, it's going to keep doing that. So that's why you need the four foundations of mindfulness, so you can be aware of the arising of discontentedness as a bodily sensation. And that's why it's protecting your mind, and it's protecting others too, because you won't allow those discontent feelings to come into the mind, and now you won't act upon them. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions here. Maybe Samantha, you would like to read this last one? Oh, Vipav, you have a question? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, can you please go back to the... So, I mean, I had a kind of a tangential question to what is being said here. It seems here that the apprentice is... Would you say they're going against the teacher's advice here?
In this particular case, this apprentice is going against their teacher, but this is an acrobat, right? That's what they are. They're not, it's not like a Buddhist teacher, because in a situation where you have a Buddhist teacher, they're going to have more wisdom and more understanding the way that it should work than their students. But here, as this acrobat, this particular teacher didn't have an understanding of the mind as the student did.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. And Samantha, go ahead, ma'am.
This was to read, if you still wanted me to read.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Breathing mindfulness meditation for abandoning mental distraction. Monk, there are these three things. What three? Being difficult to correct, unwholesome friendship, and mental distraction. These are three things. Three other things are to be developed for abandoning these three things. What three? Being easy to correct is to be developed for abandoning being difficult to correct. Wholesome friendship is to be developed for abandoning unwholesome friendship. Mindfulness of breathing is to be developed for abandoning mental distraction. These three things are to be developed for abandoning the former three things.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So here, there's these three things that are going to be challenging, and it's not going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. The first one is being difficult to correct, right? In order to be able to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have a one-on-one relationship with a teacher, where the teacher is helping you to be able to see certain aspects of your mind that you're not seeing yourself. You wouldn't be able to read books and attend classes and just get to an enlightenment. You're going to need to actually have a personal relationship with a teacher, because you're going to need to understand how to apply those teachings in specific situations. And you might even decide to spend some time with that teacher so that they can observe your mind, because the unenlightened mind's lack of wisdom, it won't see things about itself that are there. So what a teacher can do is they can observe your practice, and then they can provide you guidance to be able to help you. But oftentimes what the mind will have is it'll have ego, where it doesn't want to hear any kind of corrections, and it might push that away. And a teacher is only going to be able to do that so many times before they're just going to stop interacting with you, and they're going to stop teaching you, because you're not really truly benefiting from the guidance that they're providing. So why continue to provide guidance to that person? So if you're having any kind of difficulties with being corrected, so to speak, or having your teacher point out challenges of your practice, this is coming from the mind's craving, and it's coming from the mind's ego, the conceit. So you need to be able to eliminate that. And the way that you do that is become easy to correct, easy for that teacher to be able to guide you. Because remember, they're there to help you. They're there to be able to help you get to enlightenment. You're not giving them any kind of payment. They're not expecting anything from you. They're just there for your benefit. So if you make it so that you're difficult to correct, you're actually going to slow down your progress. So getting rid of that ego, getting rid of any kind of cravings associated with being difficult to correct, that's going to help you to make more progress. Then if you have unwholesome friendship, this is going to make it challenging for you to get to enlightenment. This is people who are into unwholesome things. If you choose to associate with those people, your mind's going to tend to lean in that direction. So you're going to experience difficulties there. So the way to solve that is to cultivate wholesome relationships. And then in the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of mental distraction. The mind's going to lack concentration and focus. And what's going to improve that is breathing mindfulness meditation. That's what's going to eliminate that. So the unenlightened mind can just be all over the place oftentimes, not really thinking about what it's doing and what's transpiring. You need to be able to be focused and concentrated. You need to have well-collected thought in order to be able to apply the teachings in any given situation. If you allow your mind to just keep jumping all over the place, it's never going to be focused and concentrated and bring forth your wisdom in your day-to-day life. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is what's helping you to eliminate that so you can cultivate singleness of mind and concentration. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, looks like Vibhav. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, teacher. Can you go back to your notes on the chapter? You explained how. Go down a little bit. I think there's a section where you explain how the calmness leads to mindfulness, and that leads to concentration, and that leads to wisdom. Can you explain this?
Sure.
Again?
Sure. When the mind's calm, you'll have awareness of mind. And when you have awareness of mind, which is mindfulness, there'll be concentration, there'll be focus, there'll be clarity. And when you have that, then you can access your wisdom and make wise decisions to produce wholesome results. But when you have the opposite of this, that's where you run into problems. So if your mind's all shaken up, right? Your mind's all shaken up. You get a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible accident, right? And your mind's all shaken up and you're running across town to hurry up and get to the hospital. You don't have mindfulness or awareness of mind. And this is where you very easily are not now concentrated and focused. And now you're going to lack wisdom and you're not making wise decisions to drive nicely across town. You end up getting in a car accident yourself. That's the unwholesome karma of not cultivating a calm mind, because your mind wasn't able to get to the wisdom. And now even if you show up to the hospital, you can't talk to the doctors and nurses in a way that you understand what's going on and start making wise decisions to help mom, because the mind is so uncalm. It doesn't have mindfulness, it doesn't have focus and concentration, and it doesn't have wisdom at that point. So that's why the Buddha teaches you to practice equanimity and train your mind to get rid of any craving and clinging so it's not shaken up in any situation.
Okay.
Let me add something to this for a second, Vibhav. In order to be able to get to enlightenment, you need to be able to bring your practice up to the point where your mind is calm at all times and you are making wise decisions for multiple years at a time. That's why we talk about bringing your practice up to the Eightfold Path and living that way for an extended period of time. It's getting to wisdom, because the mind is making so many unwise choices in the unenlightened state. So you really need to be able to get your practice up to the point where the mind is performing and it's wise. And now you live your life that way, making all those wise decisions for multiple years.
Okay. I guess that my question was on the sequence here. I guess maybe I misunderstood. Like I thought that concentration, you do the breathing mindfulness meditation and you build concentration that helps develop mindfulness, but you're saying it's the other way around.
This is in day-to-day life. We're not talking about meditation in this particular thing. The chapter is about meditation, right? But here what I'm talking about is I'm talking about what you're practicing in day-to-day life.
Okay.
I'm talking about how do you access wisdom? The way you access wisdom is you need a calm mind. And then by having a calm mind, you will have mindfulness or awareness of mind. And then by having that, you will be able to have concentration, and then you'll be able to access your wisdom.
Okay, the calm mind is built through meditation.
Yes, but you also need to practice wholesome moral conduct. If you're not practicing wholesome moral conduct, your mind's not going to be calm. And you also need to practice things like the 7 factors of enlightenment and things of this nature. The Eightfold Path. It's the whole Eightfold Path. It's not just meditation that's producing the calm mind. Because that whole Eightfold, the reason why the mind is uncalm is because it has craving, desire, attachment. What the Eightfold Path is doing is it's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So it's not just meditation that's helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment. It's all factors of the entire path that is helping you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, which is bringing the mind to calmness because you're eliminating attachments.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. All right. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do here is just end the way I typically do by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. Next week, we're going to be in the next set of chapters. So we're going to be in chapters 21 through 34 next week, because this book actually ends on chapter 34. So we have 14 chapters that we're going to cover, but a lot of them have the things that we have already studied, so we can kind of skip over them the way that we have done. But we're going to be studying 14 chapters, so feel free to study those before or after class. And as I mentioned, coming up this week, I'm going to be teaching a retreat here in Chiang Mai. You guys might be able to catch this because it's taught at 9 a.m. Thai time up to 12:30 Thai time. And then I teach another session from 6:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. And I'm going to be live streaming that. And maybe you can attend some sessions and you can't attend others, or maybe you watch the recordings. These are all options for you. So just know that I'm going to be teaching that. And this is really helpful for anybody who's ready to start peering into the 10 fetters. And then you guys can look at the schedule on the website and see all the other options that we have related to courses and retreats and all these different things. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being interested in these teachings. And perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.